Hello, Forever Family. My name's Shan. I'm the recovery pastor, and we are in a video series. This series is called The 7 Stages of Loving Someone in Addiction. This video is stage 6. Quick recap. Had someone send a message that said, hey, let's talk about those that are loving someone in addiction. So I made a Facebook post and got a ton of responses. No joke, like 60 or 70 different responses. As a matter of fact, I'm still getting responses from that post. So let's do a quick recap of the different stages. So what I did is I took your responses and broke them into the 7 stages, what I feel like are the 7 stages. This is not based on any clinical science. There was no study group. This is just me breaking down your responses of your stories and where I thought they would fit along this journey. So there's an intro video. There's stage 1, which is shell shock. There's stage 2, which is clinging to hope. There's stage 3, which is enabling and rage. There's stage 4, which is numb and fearful. Stage 5 is reality of the battle. And now we're in stage 6. This is the point where we're like, I'm getting off this crazy train. Literally, this stage, I'm calling it getting off the crazy train. We have gone through the vicious cycle to where we need self-care, we need recovery ourselves, we have given our situation and our loved one to God. We are working on restoring our relationships with those that we've lost because we were trying to love someone in addiction and this other person maybe was trying to show them tough love, where we were being codependent and an enabler. And as crazy as it sounds, we're actually thankful for the calls from jail. We're thankful for the calls from rehab. Instead of having a trooper show up at our door at midnight to tell us that there's been an accident. Did you ever think you would be grateful for a call from jail or anything like that? Is that crazy to think that? But the funny thing is, that's a lot of people's realities now. They're actually thankful for that time to hear their loved one on the other side of the phone that is not in active addiction anymore. They get to hear the loved one, like what they remember, not the addiction talking to them, but their loved one talking to them. So we find ourselves in a new normal. Things will never be the same. We have to look at every single day. We have to break down every single day, the good, bad, and the sideways. But now we actually get to look forward to positive days. So why is it important for me to have a recovery program when I'm not the one that had the addiction? That question was posed to me in one of the responses. This person also said, why should I sit through meetings so they can just blame me for everything that's ever gone wrong in their life? Why should I listen to lectures when I've walked through hell for them and I have the scars to prove it? Well, in order for me to answer this question, we must look at several different steps in recovery, several different aspects. And there are 3 different aspects. The first one is the wound. The second one is the wound treatment. And the third one is the long-term care. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. We're done. We're ready to get off this crazy train. So the first one is the wound. For the loved one of the one in addiction, the wound is sometimes something that will haunt you until you're just absolutely numb. It is hard to separate these 3 sometimes. So I'm going to do my best to break down the best perspective of this stage. Okay, so first, let's look at the loved one that's in active addiction. There's a wound. Okay, So when you go through recovery and you work your inventory, we look at what hurt me. How did I use that hurt to basically hurt myself or go through self-destruction? And then how did I repackage that hurt and send it out to other people? So let's look at the wound first. What could the wound be? The wound could be abuse, abandonment, betrayal, divorce, dysfunctional family, neglect, rape, rejection, anxiety, a critical spirit, depression, eating disorder, fear, grief, loss, insecurities, job loss, low self-esteem, people-pleasing, PTSD, sickness, workaholic, and the list goes on and on and on. Until the wound is addressed and you see it for what it is, and it's brought to the surface, or in other words, until you face your wound, face your issues, and face the situations that you're beating yourself up about, it will only grow into a larger and larger and larger wound, causing more destruction, not only to those that are dealing with the wound, but to everyone around. So, if we do not decide to have our wound checked, if we do not seek help, then we're in for a bad spiral. When someone is dealing with a wound, they have to seek care. They have to seek treatment. This is through recovery or treatment facilities, recovery meetings, professional counseling, pastoral counseling. But remember, first we have to see what the wound is. We have to acknowledge it. We have to face it. And then we have to seek care. So by bringing these 2 points together, we see the wound and we know it needs treatment. Now, not every rehab works for everybody. Not every treatment plan works for everybody. But each wound has a specific treatment plan. If you don't treat it, it's not going to heal. And then what happens is that person takes that wound or that hurt and continues to hurt others. That's why we say hurting people hurt people, because they're not addressing their wounds. They're just passing the hurt on. So, quick example, if someone was physically abused, that's their hurt. They were physically abused. They may take that physical abuse and use it to hurt themselves. They may cut, they may burn themselves, they may withhold food from themselves, but they're going to punish themselves somehow, some way, because the wound is still there. They haven't addressed it yet. Then if they don't address it, what they do is they basically repackage it and send it out into the world. So they may be physically, mentally, emotionally abusive to someone else. Or if they're not abusive, they could, not like hitting abusive, but they could be just vicious. They won't let anybody close to them. And I use this example because this is kind of how domestic violence goes. So I want to talk about this just for a second. Domestic violence occurs long before the first hit, okay? It starts with the emotional breakdown. It starts with the mental breakdown long before it ever moves to physical. Domestic violence is basically removing anything from your life that you identify with, that makes you a strong person, that is your support system, that is your foundation. And as it progresses over time, eventually it can lead to the physical assault. but not always. Some people who commit domestic violence have broken down the person in their life that they say they love. They've broken them down so far mentally and emotionally that all they have to do is barely flinch as if they were going to hit them. And that other person runs in fear. So domestic violence is not always physical attacks. This is always another point. This is also another point that I like to make that people don't like to hear, but oh well, life goes on. Men are not always the one committing domestic violence. There are women that commit domestic violence, and I'm not excusing that. But when someone is so wounded and they don't seek wound treatment, they repackage it and they send it out into the world. That's why you have to make a decision to get off the crazy train. I'll share a quick story with you. I had a guy tell me, and this was a very tall guy, very naturally thick guy. He was probably 6'4", 6'5", easily 320, but just rock solid. His wife was like 4'10", maybe 5 foot tall. And he finally, people would make remarks about, man, you're all bruised up. What's the deal? And he would excuse it away. Well, I was working on a car and the ridge came loose and my arm slung across and hit, and that's why I'm bruised. And there was always an excuse, and it seemed reasonable. He was so beat down emotionally and mentally because his wife used his children as pawns. She would constantly threaten the children. And he was raised that you don't ever put your hands on a woman. That you do everything you can to be the perfect provider for your wife and your children, and you keep your home intact. That's how he was raised. When he finally broke down and told several of us that he couldn't even sleep at night because his wife would sleep with a gun under her pillow, pointed towards him. He didn't realize that he was actually in a domestic violence relationship. Because in his mind, it was always the man that was the aggressor. If you don't get your wound treated, it will grow and it will grow and it will grow. And you will hurt more and more and more people. There is absolutely 100% no shame in seeking help. It's nobody's business why you're seeking help. That is between you and the person you are seeking help with. It's like when you're at a recovery meeting and there's a blue chip. And I have people say, well, they've got 12 blue chips. So maybe they have 12 issues they're trying to get rid of. That blue chip is between them and God. Your wound care is between you and the person you are seeking care from, that you are seeking healing from. And people have heard me say many times, and I've been scolded when I say this, but I'll probably continue to say this. If you need something to talk about, then look in the mirror and address your own issues, because if you've not walked in my shoes fully, then you do not understand my wounds. Cut and dry. You don't have that perspective, so you can't speak to my perspective. Your recovery is your responsibility. So it is perfectly okay with seeking wound care. There is no shame. I don't know if I need to say that like a million more times. There is no shame in seeking wound care. Now, the third point of this video is long-term care. Recovery is not a one and done. It's not like taking a college class and then you never have to take it again. It is a continued process. Okay, so recovery is a lifestyle because a relapse is always lurking. And again, we're not talking about just drugs and alcohol. We're talking about gambling, overspending, undereating, exercising. There's a whole list of addictions. A relapse is always lurking out there. So your long-term care keeps your relapse from occurring. So what do we mean by that? Long-term care is to continue going to meetings, and be aware. Be aware of what's going on. And I'm not talking about in the meetings. I'm talking with yourself, with your wound. Keep your wound in check. If you no longer feel like going to the meetings are doing you any good, if going to the meeting is a burden and you're not getting anything out of it, if you don't feel lifted up or refreshed because you were able to get some of your burden off, maybe you've outgrown your meeting, and that's okay too. Because growing people change. You want change. Change is good. So in other words, if they're talking about one subject and you're battling another subject, then you're not maintaining your long-term care. It's time for you to seek another meeting. If you're not being able to address the issues that you are battling day in and day out, it is okay to change groups. It is okay to have a new sponsor. It is okay to seek something different as long as you are still working your recovery. Now, I've also had people tell me this. They have a different sponsor for each wound. I've had one person tell me, she said, I have a sponsor for my heroin addiction. I have a sponsor for my spending addiction. And then I have a long-term care sponsor that I can just talk to them almost like a life coach. I can brainstorm with them. I can bounce stuff off of them and make sure that I'm not thinking, well, she called it addict brain. I don't like using those labels, but she said I have to make sure I'm not thinking with an addict brain because relapse is always lurking. It is your recovery. Relapse will be sitting there waiting to welcome you with open arms. But recovery works if you work it. If you're not feeling renewed or rejuvenated, it is time for a change. If you stay too long in your comfort zone, again, relapse is waiting. It will welcome you. So remember, relapse is not the actual event of falling back into addiction. Relapse begins many months before the actual addiction starts again. There are many behaviors that take place before the relapse happens. This is why you need long-term care. So you can talk to your sponsor. You can talk to, if you want to call them your life coach, you can talk to them about things you're going through and things that are bothering you. Or maybe you're talking to them about something and you're emotionally not registering where you need to be. And they can say that to you. And that way you can put it in check and keep that relapse from ever coming up. I'm going to say it again. I say it at the end of every video. If you are in active addiction, it is never too late to ask for help. If you are loving someone in addiction, you can ask for help too. You need recovery also. You need wound care also. It's absolutely okay to ask for help. There is no shame in that game. I have great resources. I would love to connect you up. My email will be in the description. But know that God didn't create you to be a tool of the victim. What I mean by that is taking your wound, repackaging it, and sending it out to the others. In other words, I'm hurt. I'm the victim, but I'm going to hurt you. Don't be a tool of the victim. In other words, don't use yourself as the victim to excuse your actions. It's not fair when you unleash your wound on someone else and create a wound in them. That's not fair. They're not your verbal punching bag, your emotional or your mental punching bag. Just like you don't want to be a punching bag for someone else. Reach out and receive the wound care you need. Receive that long-term treatment that you deserve. Go back in to the other videos, check them out. They're all called the 7 stages of loving someone in addiction. This is part 6. This is getting off the crazy train. Enough is enough. You deserve healthy, happy tomorrows. So, we are up to the final stage next. I look forward to your comments and your posts. Please share with someone that you feel this may be a video that would open the door to a hard conversation. So until next time, much agape, everybody.